My name's Riley Hamilton, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's December 7th, 2020. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Riley Hamilton about SPQR. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. Riley is a comic creator, regular contributor to Sequential magazine, and he's an Ottawa sports fan. SPQR is a brand new comic created, written, and lettered by Riley, with pencils from Samrat Das, inks from Roel Roque, and colors by Lucas Apparazio. It's a historical fiction set in the Roman Empire in 69 CE, also known as a year of the Four Emperors. Story is an action comic with a healthy dose of character drama and is inspired by true events. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Riley Hamilton about SPQR. Riley Hamilton, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Yes, I do remember the first comic book I ever read, and it was actually Ultimate Spider-Man #1, the original, the first one of that Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Bagley run. I got it in 2002 at the comic book shop on Free Comic Book Day.
Wow, that was cool.
I was actually not, yeah, exactly. I was not there to get a comic book. I was actually there to pick up Yu-Gi-Oh cards, because those were the huge thing at the time. Mm-hmm. And the cashier said, "Hey, it's Free Comic Book Day. Here's a free comic for you to read. I hope you enjoy it." And let me tell you, I definitely did.
Well, that was a good one to pick up, that's for sure. So I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
So the big drive for me creating today, well, I must say, not necessarily creatively, but in terms of just people who were inspired me to, actually get down and write, and also sort of learn the process of creating my own book. There's a couple. I'm going to name drop Brendan Montgomery, who's now the editor-in-chief of Sequential magazine. He was a big influence on getting me actually to the point of, hey, you can self-publish these things. You can create all of this stuff yourself. There's a way to do it, even if you're not, the greatest artist or you're not a great colorist. There's a way, there's a path forward to get this thing done without having to go through a big name publisher and, be able to actually self-publish and do it yourself. So he was a big influence. And also a guy I actually met at Fan Expo 2017 or 2018. I can't remember exactly which one it is now. He's another Canadian indie creator by the name of Eric Bitmanis. He created Hardwired and is now working on a new project called Gray Matter, which is currently in production and hoping to be released, I believe, sometime next year. Don't quote me on that, but those were my biggest two influences, because they showed me that there is a way to create comics if you're just, a guy with an idea and a little bit of passion. That doesn't involve, having to go through and, get hired at Marvel or get hired at DC or, pitch ideas to dozens of editors in hundreds of countries. There's a way forward to do it yourself on your own terms.
Good stuff. So I want to focus a little bit on your latest project, and if you could talk a little bit about it, your Kickstarter called SPQR. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's a historical fiction. So it's a fictional story set in our own past, as opposed to, in a fictional world or an alternate reality of Earth. It is our proper Earth. It's set in the early Roman Empire. And it follows the story of a young boy who's a member of a tribe of nomads who are in desperate need. They're starving, struggling to survive. and they cross over the borders into the Roman Empire looking for food, looking for shelter, looking for a place to be safe from the dangers of, the wilderness. And they've heard about these famous Romans and how terrifying and powerful they are. And this young boy, Ara, who we follow, is looking out to prove himself as a warrior and as a provider to, help his people survive, but also to, get a little bit of glory on the battlefield for himself. Little does he know, though, that the Romans are waiting for them and are anticipating their arrival. So that's the sort of the pitch that I put out to people who are asking me sort of what the book is about.
Right. I was curious because not many stories focus on this particular historical time period. So I'm wondering why you chose this one.
The big reason why I chose this one is that it's always been a time period that's fascinated me. And I agree with you in that there are not a lot of comics in particular that cover historical events, and even fewer that cover the Roman Empire. There are some very, very good historical comics that sort of take a fictional story and put it into a real world historical scenario. I mean, I can think of off the top of my head a series like Northlanders or Rebels or Britannia. Britannia is probably the closest one because it actually is in the Roman period, although it's a fictionalized Roman period. So there's a little bit of that one's more less historical, more sort of supernatural. So my focus was to sort of take a story that was more totally grounded in reality and give people an idea of what life was like in the Roman Empire and how similar it is to our lives currently, but also how very, very different it is. And I feel that the Roman period is a very interesting one, a very tumultuous one, and one that doesn't get enough screen time, in my opinion, as opposed to, say, something a little bit more contemporary that we, have more closer connection to, like, say, World War II, World War I. There's lots of media about that. But also, I think that's because a lot of people who are around, who are reading comics and things like that today, know people who were actually alive, and maybe they didn't fight in the war, maybe they did fight in the war, and have that sort of close personal connection to it, which is why I feel that those more contemporary events are very, very popular for comics media, whereas something that's happened, 2,000 years ago, that there isn't that same connection to it. So I feel like it sort of gets tossed under by the wayside.
Right. No, that's understandable. So for something that, as you said, based on reality, how much research did you have to do to make the pages come alive and make sure that you were still sticking to the historical facts?
There's always a great sort of tug and pull, I feel, between historical accuracy and telling a good story. So you hear about that a lot when it comes to other media depicting historical events. There's always that sort of how much of this is actually true or 100% true, and how much of it is either not necessarily not true, but sort of stretched to make things juicier, more interesting, things like that. So what I tried to do was try to strike the balance as closely as I could. The philosophy that I followed was sort of make it as close to historical reality as possible, but also, there's going to be a little bit of not necessarily stretching the truth, but a little bit of invention to sort of give it a little bit more flair. So actually, the main event that takes place in sort of the second half of this book is actually a real historical event that we have record of. But it's interesting in the fact that all we really know about it are a couple of, I don't want to say throwaway lines, but a couple of sentences, a little short paragraph by a famous Roman historian who basically summed up, hey, that there was an incursion of these nomadic peoples into the Roman Empire, and the legions marched out and fought them, and that's all we know. That's all the information we're given. So we're given the year that it happened. So it happened in the year 69 CE. A tribe of nomads came across the border. The Romans fought them. That's it. So we know it happened, but we have no details as to anything beyond that. We don't know what happened to anyone who was involved. We don't know if, anyone important was at the battle. But So there is room for sort of creative freedom to construct a story and include characters and create characters centered around an event without necessarily making it ahistorical, because we just don't know that much about it. We know it happened and we know where it happened roughly, but we don't have any further details, which gives me a lot of creative freedom to be able
Hmm.
to make my story without having accusations thrown at me and going, "Oh, you just that none of that's historical. You made all that up. You're lying," anything like that. So
Right, right.
I got a nice balance between the historical and the fictional.
Well, it sounds very intriguing, that's for sure. Now, we mentioned that this is a Kickstarter project, so I'm wondering what incentives are you offering to go along with the book?
So for the Kickstarter, there are several reward tiers. There's a sort of standard, $1, just support the project, you'll get a credit in the back of the book. And then as you go up, there's a digital copy. There's two covers that I did. So we did a standard cover for the print copy, and we also did a variant cover that is exclusive to the Kickstarter. So we're only going to be giving out those covers for any backers who choose that variant option through the Kickstarter. So there's only going to be a limited number of those. We've also got a few beautiful prints by a number of artists who contributed their takes on sort of more general Roman themes. I
Hmm.
didn't want to sort of limit the artwork to just being about, this specific year or anything like that. So I told the artists that I work with to sort of, I'll let you guys go wild and, Roman period, anything you want to draw, I'll let you draw it. So we've got a couple of nice sort of cover slash poster style prints that are sort of a combination of, Roman legionaries, horsemen, a couple of duels on one of the prints. Another one of the prints is a gladiator fight in an arena, not necessarily the Colosseum, but in an arena. So with a
Hmm.
crowd in the background and a couple of gladiators locked in single combat, which I think is really neat. And my personal favorite is a rendition of Nero playing the fiddle while
No.
Rome burns behind him in the background. So you have a nice, you
Yeah.
know, Nero playing his fiddle with a nice, orange glow of the flames of Rome in the background, which I thought is a really, really nice print that we were able to get. So in the higher tiers, you'll be able to get those prints in addition to the print copy issues of the comic. And then at the top tier is a all those previous rewards plus in addition to that you will actually be featured as a character with
Oh,
speaking lines in the next
wow.
issue.
That's pretty
Because
cool.
yeah, I always figured that's something that I always thought personally when I was back in comics. I always thought that was something that was really cool that always drew my attention.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, just seeing yourself in a comic, I imagine that would be surreal. I never usually when I found the any rewards that had those were all taken almost immediately. So
Right.
you gotta be quick on those ones. But I don't know, it's one of the things that I think would be cool to see is yourself in a comic staring back. It's your face drawn on a page doing something in whatever book you're in. So I thought that was a cool reward. So I put that in there. Yeah, like I said, and it's not just a sort of a throwaway one panel sort of thing. We're actually going to be giving the backers who put that in. We're going to be giving the characters that they are portraying essentially speaking roles and more than just hey, you're a face in the background of one panel.
That's very cool. Now, I know that you're working really hard on SPQR, but I'm wondering if you have any other projects that are coming up that you can talk about.
Not as of right now. What I am working on right now that's not it is comics related, but it's not writing comics related. It's not necessarily a creative project, but it is a comics project, and that's the Sequential Magazine and the 80th anniversary of Canadian comics is coming up in 2021. And for that, I will actually be contributing to the oversized special issue of Sequential Magazine. And my focus is I will be covering Indigenous comics creators in Canada, sort of not only their history but also contemporary creators and what they're doing and what they want to see come out of Indigenous comics and just comics in general in the future. So I'm very excited to get that underway. I've got a few things still that I need to iron out, a few details before I actually get down to doing the interviews and starting to write. But that's the next comics related project that I have upcoming. As for SPQR, the Kickstarter's running for the entire month of December. Once that's done, if it's successful, and I'm hoping it is, we're doing pretty well so far. The plan is to get everything printed, put together, and shipped by sort of beginning of February. That's the goal. If things change, all my backers will be aware of it. And we're shipping everywhere across the world. So regardless of whether you're in Canada, the United States, Europe, Asia, everywhere. So we're trying to reach sort of a global audience, and a lot of the artists and colorists and the inker that were affiliated with the project are all actually from outside of North America. We have a couple in Asia and one in South America. So it's very much an international project when it comes to the creative team. So we want to try and encourage that for the readership as well.
Right. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot on the go. So I'm wondering where people can find out more about your works and your current work and your future work. Where do you recommend people go to find you online and through social media?
So I don't have my own website yet, but once everything gets sort of settled with the Kickstarter, I will be launching a Gumroad page that'll be Riley Hamilton Comics. That'll probably be launching sort of end of December, beginning of January, once I have everything sort of finalized for SPQR issue 1. The main place where you can reach me right now would be on Twitter at Rhodes Scores. So RHODES That's my Twitter handle, and that's the easiest place to reach me right now in lieu of me actually not having my own personal website yet.
Very good. Well, Riley, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask you that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I don't have much else to add, just that the Kickstarter is going until the end of December. So if any of your listeners want to contribute, want to check it out, it's at Kickstarter SPQR issue 1, and it'll be running until the end of December. So look forward to having you guys check it out, anyone who's interested. And if you want to support, I very much appreciate it. And I'll say thank you if you do decide to preemptively.
Thanks to Riley for the chat. You can discover more about Riley on Twitter at Rhodes Scores. That's RHODES And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.